tonight, the showdown on Capitol Hill. House Republicans pushing impeachment of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas over border security, how he is firing back. The undercover raid, Israeli forces disguised as doctors and Palestinian women storming a hospital in the West Bank. The suspects they were hunting. The dramatic video shown of the trial of a school shooter's mother. Images of her crying in a police car after the massacre, and what she said about her son. An atmospheric river known as the Pineapple Express set to slam the West Coast with heavy rain. Our NBC News exclusive, my conversation with the CEO of Microsoft. I asked him about the rise of AI and the threat it could pose to our elections. And the two-time Tony winner who starred in the original Broadway productions of Chicago and West Side Story, remembering the legendary Chita Rivera.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. President Biden today says he has decided on a response to this weekend's deadly attack on American soldiers in Jordan. 3 U.S. troops were killed and 30 injured in the drone attack on a U.S. military outpost on Sunday. The president not telegraphing whether the U.S. response will be a military one, but has said his administration intends to hold all those accountable at a time and in a manner of our choosing. The president says he holds Iran responsible as a supplier of weapons to the militants. Iran is denying any involvement in Sunday's attack. Tonight, a region already embroiled by war in Gaza and attacks on shipping appears to be teetering even closer to the edge. Peter Alexander has late details from the White House.
Tonight, President Biden says he's decided how he'll respond to that deadly drone attack on U.S. troops by an Iranian-backed militia.
Yes.
The president today pressed by NBC's Gabe Gutierrez if he holds Iran responsible for the attack.
I do hold them responsible in the sense of supplying the weapons to the people who did it.
The commander-in-chief's decision comes shortly after a U.S. official says the president spoke with members of his national security team this morning, following this Situation Room meeting Monday, where the president and his top aides analyzed several retaliatory options the Pentagon had presented to him. President Biden's under pressure to respond after U.S. troops were killed by Iranian-backed militant groups for the first time since the Israel-Hamas war began in October. The latest in more than 160 attacks by militias against bases with Americans during that time. The president has ordered limited strikes in response, but they have not deterred the Iranian-backed groups.
We'll see.
Sunday's attack at a remote outpost in Jordan, Tower 22, while U.S. troops were sleeping. The Pentagon is examining whether the explosive enemy drone got past air defenses in a moment of confusion when a U.S. drone was also landing. The president today speaking to the families of the 3 service members killed, 46-year-old Sergeant William Rivers, Sergeant Kennedy Sanders, just 24, and 23-year-old Sergeant Brianna Moffitt. Her parents devastated by the loss.
If we knew what we know now.
I want to apologize because I really thought it was 3 men that got killed. My apologies for that. But all in all, whenever you sign up in the military, you're not male or female. You're strictly a soldier. It don't matter if you are male or female. Don't matter if you're bisexual. Don't matter if you're heterosexual. Don't matter if you're whatever. Whenever you're enlisted in the military, you are a soldier. But I do want to apologize because I truly did do an oversight on that pertaining to not realizing that it was a female soldier.
Would have just said, I love you so much. Just make sure that she knew that she wasn't alone. And that we love her.
Tonight, Republican critics say President Biden has not done enough to confront Iran and to deter the attacks.
They're doing nothing that is meaningful, and now we have more Gold Star families because of it, and it's infuriating.
And so, Peter, the president has not revealed what his response will be, including whether he'll take action inside Iran, but giving a clue about what he hopes will not happen.
Lester, the president today said, I don't think we need a wider war in the Middle East. That is not what I'm looking for. His words there. Meanwhile, the White House says President Biden will be there at Dover Air Force Base when the bodies of those 3 U.S. service members return home this Friday. Lester.
Peter Alexander starting us off from the White House. Thanks. Republicans moving.
I do want to make another comment that I have seen women in the 21st century, young girls, that as far as I'm concerned, they could run, they could handle a load, they could shoot, they could endure on the battlefield just as good, if not better, than men. Just as good, if not better than men, especially determining on the individual. This guy here, they're basically going to use him as an scapegoat, I think, personally. They may not impeach him, I don't know, or fire him, whatever the word may be. But the bottom line is this. We've had a government that has failed to do its duties to protect and take care of the American people, especially since 9/11 occurred. That as far as I'm concerned, that's whenever the failure started in not doing the same as our ancestors did whenever Pearl Harbor was attacked.
Moving forward tonight with impeachment articles against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, accusing him of allowing millions of migrants to cross the border. Ryan Nobles is at the Capitol tonight. Ryan, where does all this go?
Lester, right now a House committee is debating the merits of these articles of impeachment against Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. It will likely become a vote for the entire House of Representatives. Republicans are accusing Mayorkas of willfully ignoring the law, and they say that President Biden's border policies have led to a record 8.6 million migrant crossings since President Biden took office. Now, Mayorkas has said this is nothing.
Did you hear that? 8.6 million. That's an estimated figure. But 8.6 million is basically the population of Chicago. The metro Chicago area, all the area of Chicago, is basically about 8 million people. Maybe a little over that, but not much more. Can you imagine bringing that kind of a load in on already our dwindling resources? Can you imagine if even 1%, which would be, I think, if I'm calculating right, 800 people, if they was true felons, law-breaking people, especially if they was terrorists that come over here to do harm and hurt to the American people. Can you only imagine now how vulnerable that we have become just since Biden got in power? That's what they're talking about. They're talking about our safety. They're talking about what's been going on now for the past 3 years and a month or something like that. Unbelievable.
Than a political stunt. He's called the accusations against him baseless. He could be the first cabinet secretary impeached in nearly 150 years. It is unlikely, though, that the Senate will convict him. Lester?
Ryan Nobles, thank you. In the Middle East, a dramatic undercover operation in a hospital today by Israeli commandos, killing a member of Hamas they say was planning an imminent terror attack. Here's Raf Sanchez.
Tonight, security video showing the dramatic 5:30 a.m. raid inside a hospital in the occupied West Bank. Those are undercover Israeli commandos, some disguised as medical staff in scrubs, others as Palestinian women in headscarves. Their weapons reportedly equipped with silencers. Israel saying the commandos killed a Hamas operative who was planning an imminent terror attack, along with 2 members of Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Tonight, those groups acknowledging their members were killed. One was shot at close range while sleeping in his hospital bed, according to medical officials. The Palestinian Authority condemning the raid as a war crime.
Israel, of course, has the right to carry out operations to bring terrorists to justice, but those operations need to be conducted in full compliance with international humanitarian law.
It comes as a potential deal to pause the fighting in Gaza for 2 months and free hostages held by Hamas hangs in the balance. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu under pressure from the far right of his cabinet, tonight saying he won't release thousands of terrorists from Israeli prisons, a key Hamas demand. Hamas saying it's studying the proposal, but insisting any deal must end the war, something Israel has rejected. And the families of some of the 6 American hostages met with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in Washington tonight. They got an update on U.S. efforts to broker a deal to free their loved ones. Lester?
Raf Sanchez in Tel Aviv, thank you. Now to the unprecedented trial of a Michigan school shooter's mother. Prosecutors allege Jennifer Crumley ignored repeated red flags about her son. And today the jury saw a dramatic video of her in a police car after the massacre. Here's Maggie Vespa.
Tonight, recorded in a squad car and played for a jury, a Michigan mom coming to terms with her son's rampage.
My son just ruined his life. I'll never see him again.
Jennifer Crumley now facing involuntary manslaughter charges for the 2021 Oxford High School shooting, during which her then 15-year-old son Ethan killed 4 students. Prosecutors playing this video from the hours after. In Ethan's 2 bedrooms, prosecutors say they found boarded up windows, a BB gun, and targets riddled with bullet holes. In his parents' bedroom, an empty gun box.
James came home and he looked open the gun box and the gun's gone.
Prosecutors arguing Crumley and her husband, who will be tried separately, ignored warning signs their son could be violent. The defense arguing there's no way she could have prevented the shooting.
I never even like he was not even having mental issues. I don't get what happened.
Oxford's then Dean of Students also testifying today. The defense arguing administrators could have done more, including searching Ethan's backpack, which contained a gun.
Your conclusion was that the shooter's son was not a threat.
There was no threat.
Maggie Vespa, NBC News, Chicago.
We are watching a powerful storm, a Pineapple Express heading toward the...
Pineapple Express. That's kind of, I don't know. You don't hear that terminology a whole lot. Pertaining to the forces of nature. Getting back on the gun shooting. We as a society should be 1,000 times more vigilant today in making sure that we pay close attention to what people are doing, how they're responding, how they're reacting, what they're talking about, the subject matter that they're talking about. Today, more so than ever, it's pretty obvious that nothing is considered off the charts pertaining to sacred. Whenever you can go into a hospital and basically start mutilating your enemy, in which I don't blame them for wanting to destroy their enemy, but I mean, is there not no barriers nowhere pertaining to bloodshed? We're seeing bloodshed in our schools. We're seeing bloodshed in our churches. We're seeing bloodshed in some of the most profound areas today that did not exist 30 plus years ago, not on the level that it is today. So it's pretty obvious that the Americans have been plagued with an infliction. And this infliction is costing that many more dollar bills as well as that many more lives until we address the problem fully and completely. I don't know what our chief and commander has got up his sleeve pertaining to these 3 individuals who has recently died, that has humbly paid the ultimate sacrifice for our liberty and our freedom. But I know this, no matter where they go, the enemies at large, we will find them and we will do what needs to be done in seeing justice performed in the eyes of the Almighty. You know, I used not think the way that I think. I really didn't. I used to think to give society the benefit of the doubt. And I used to think that I was just supposed to be somebody's whipping post or somebody's floor mat because I claimed to be a born-again Christian. But whenever you look at the Bible from front to back to front, and you start realizing, well, if that would have been the case, how come God didn't allow for it to happen whenever Lucifer decided to challenge him up in heaven? There are certain things that even God himself hates. And I understand. I just got off the phone a few hours ago talking to my son about some matters. I understand that the true born-again Christian is going to have enemies. Because even the Bible declares it. For Christ said that if they hated me, they'll hate you too as well. But there should be a certain amount of acceptable hate in what the hate mongers, especially the anti-Semitism people out there, are willing to do and get away with as far as walking all over the Christian society's rights. I personally believe that we have touched off into an area like not only America, but the world in general has never, ever been before. And it is so imperative that we pay very close attention to everything, including those that claim that they're for us, pertaining to our politicians, etc., because we are at a state right now, as far as it being critical, that before in the morning, whenever I wake up, teetotal hell could erupt, either on one continent or the other. And whenever I'm saying hell, I ain't talking about somebody shooting somebody. I'm talking about a mushroom bomb. I'm talking about a nuke going off. It bothers me to no end to realize where we are right now, in the degree that we shouldn't be where we are right now, because it all could have been avoided. Just like this operation I just got through having on my left ankle, towards them going in and whittling on me like a piece of wood. Which, you know, I'm the one that asked for that by my doctor. I feel like I chose a good doctor to do it. I've already went through one surgery similar to that, pertaining to a fissure. But if all would have went well from 1988, whenever 9 tapes circulated into the White House, I truly believe not only had we already have established a true utopia peace, even though it may have been a temporary peace, that we would not be in the positions that we're in right now towards seeing all the gang violence and all the drugs and everything else that's so topsy-turvy, much less me having to go through a second operation similar of my first operation over an old injury in 1979. I'm going to be a man about it, and I'm going to say, well, you know what? It's all of our faults. In one way. But in another way, as much material that I put out to various churches, not just here in Northwest Tennessee, but in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Washington, D.C., New York City, Long Island, Queens, all the other places pertaining to the boroughs, as much material that I have put out, there had already been some sort of movement out of that. But January the 30th, I think it's 30, maybe the 31st. I know this month has really flew by. 2024, I'm still not seeing that rallying point towards that movement being orchestrated by the Windmill Ministries missions, and not just one individual, but thousands of others that has to join in to make sure that it is a prompt, successful, I almost said enterprise. A ministry is not an enterprise, so that it could be a successful ministry of God to do what God intended for us to do going back 30 plus years ago. Whenever I correspond pertaining to the CIA in regards towards Central Intelligence Organization out of Lingling, and I use that as a paraphrase pertaining to Christ Incorporated Associates. If you are a true believer in the Lord Jesus Christ, you automatically become an associate of Christ. We are all supposed to be as Christ. In whatever demeanor that Christ displayed to us, we are supposed to display the same demeanor. No, that does not mean you're supposed to hate your enemy pertaining to what your enemy has done to you that made your enemy, because you're still supposed to love your enemy so. And you're not supposed to wish for nobody to go to a deathly burning hell other than Lucifer, the false prophet, the Antichrist, and the devil himself. As far as mankind goes, that's God's job. That's beyond our ability to be able to do that effectively. And we'll leave that in the hands of God on a spiritual level towards the yeas and the nays. In the meantime, you're supposed to pray for your enemies, though you dislike or even hate what your enemies have done that has made them your enemy, but you're still supposed to have compassion on your enemy's soul. That is a human soul. Whenever it comes to the demonic spirits, there's no mercy. There's no mercy that comes from God the Heavenly Father. There's no mercy that should be available for the church, no matter what label or shingle you want to put on the front of it. There's no mercy whenever it comes to standing up for the true justices of God. Because if it's spiritually, politically, emotionally, and humanly correct in seeing what God the Father is going to do to these evil demonic spirits in the last days, then why wouldn't it be correct in us having the same feelings towards evil? Pure, mere evil that is now ruling in areas that I never would have imagined, just like us being attacked over 150 times, trying to be provoked, trying to make something out of trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. And they're going to keep on till they're going to get a taste of what they've been dishing out. Because our American military will not stand for that for a very long length of time. I'm really surprised that something hadn't already done broke out horrendously on the level of either Desert Storm or Desert Shield. I'm really surprised that some of our top officials, Pentagon, Lingling, whoever, hadn't done already sat down and masterminded in what they're going to do and how they're going to go about doing it. In other words, call their bluff. It may be the wrong bluff. It may be the wrong bluff. But it's wrong for us to have to send our men and women over there and basically become target practitioners. It's not an open season on the American military forces. And whenever these people think that it is, well then, as far as I'm concerned, they need to get back a taste of their own medicine. That's the reason why I was so headstrong in thinking that our government went about what went on with Russia, with the Ukrainians, in the wrong format, in the wrong way, in dangling and playing with an individual that basically wanted to mutilate, desecrate, and genocide the Ukrainians. It's like David and Goliath. Well, what good is, I'm going to use this as a paraphrase, what good is Goliath, and we're supposed to be the Goliath, we're supposed to be a superpower, if Goliath sees another Goliath that's a cruel, mean Goliath that's picking on somebody like Ukraine, but we're going to sit back and watch? We're going to tolerate it? Doesn't that make us just as guilty as the people that are actually performing the suffering? I mean, I may be wrong about this, but as far as I know, our laws in America are supposed to be deemed just. And if you see somebody committing a crime in America, especially crimes on children, and you don't pick up the phone or you don't call that person's hand in what that person is doing, then that makes you just as guilty as the individual that's being cruel to those children or elderly people or whatever. Somebody has lost the ability to understand, I think, what true, godly justice, righteous justice truly is. We are reaching a critical era in our government that if we don't watch, this is only going to escalate in, once more, be an open season on our United States men and women in uniform. I'm not the one calling the shots pertaining to what went on with the 3 individuals that's now dead in trying to maintain our liberty and our freedom, our dignity. And it's probably a good thing that I'm not, because I would have done already opened up a can of you know what on this, on that group of people that done that, probably like you would never believe. Now that's just me talking pertaining to what I got feelings of right now. Maybe that's reckless in me saying that and thinking that and even talking about this right now, but it's almost like a lingering sore, and every time the scab starts to develop and you think, well, maybe I'm going to get over this infliction, all of a sudden somebody comes and hits it, bruises it, batters it, makes it bleed, or tears the scab that was all on there completely off again. And again and again and again. It's festering.
Express heading toward the west coast tonight with 11 million people under flood alerts. Parts of California could get 3 to 6 inches of rain and up to 3 feet of snow in the mountains. And by the way, they're buried in snow in Anchorage, Alaska. The city has received more than 100 inches so far this season. Now to our exclusive.
Now stop for a second. I still want to make a comment here. We must realize, even though the earth has tilted on the opposite side of the sun that we call winter, that is not affecting the upper atmosphere above the cloud. I'm going to call it a loft of it heating up, that we think, well, whenever these excess rains pertaining to these deluges happen, that's only going to happen in the summer months. No. You don't understand something. That atmosphere above those clouds are supposed to be on a certain level, day, night, 365 days out of the year, and it don't matter if it's on this side of the universe or the other side of the universe. Once you throw that pattern off, once you imbalance that, it's not only going to affect pertaining to summertime deluges, but also wintertime deluges. In other words, to see massive amounts of snow is all part of the global warming in massive amounts of H2O, liquefied water. There's so many things that our scientists and our meteorologists is not talking about pertaining to seeing these movements that are happening all over the planet that I don't even know that they have. I don't know either that they have the insight or they may be incapable of understanding what's happening below our feet as well as up above our heads. Either or, they have led us down this road of relentless hardships, cruelty, because these was the people that we paid big money to protect us. You know, if you're going to get on national TV and you're going to wear a nice suit and a white shirt and a tie, that's fine. I don't have a problem in that. I think Donald Trump probably outshines everybody when it comes to dressing nice. I've never seen some of the most elaborate ties and suits that man, I don't know who his teller is, but whoever it is, he does a nice job with him towards tucking and tailing everything in and out. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with women if that's what they want to do, get on TV and look good as far as what they wear and how they gleam and glitter and you know, kind of like living like a Hollywood movie star or something. That's fine. But we have paid these people this money, our money, the taxpayers' money, to do a certain particular job other than to get on TV and look pretty and smell nice. And that's where they have failed us. And the failure didn't just start yesterday. It's been boiling. It's been boiling. It's been boiling. And now it's starting to boil over.
CEO of the world's most valuable publicly traded company, Microsoft, has boomed as Satya Nadella has gone all in on artificial intelligence. I asked him about its risks in the upcoming election and what comes next.
Now, this is another area that basically had been boiling for quite some times, even back in the 60s. There was visionary ideals pertaining to walking off into a different domain pertaining to artificial intelligence of where we are today. These inventions have been basically dropped off on society in our laps, basically within the past 5 years, more so within the past 5 years than it has been for the past 10. Of course, you keep in mind, our military, our government has had associations with this type of intelligence now for quite some times. A matter of fact, I think that there's stuff out there that they probably have not even daresomely revealed to the American public or any public at all in regards towards unlimited in what that they can actually do with this type of intelligence, regardless whether it be on the army field or in an operating room or a space station up above our heads. I personally believe that there's lots of areas that even a high-tech savvy, well-trained individual that thinks that they know all the ins and outs pertaining to artificial intelligence, I don't think that they have a clue in where this could all go. Not a clue. In other words, they're clueless. Whenever you can basically put a contact in your eye and you can take commands in where to go and what to do, or you can be operating on somebody and you'll know just exactly, the computer will tell you just exactly how far to go over to the right or the left, even though it is so minutely small. The only way to be able to actually see where you're at is with a microscope. We're talking about less than a microscopic millimeter of a millimeter of a centimeter. You know what? You hear what I'm saying? The technology out there would absolutely blow people's minds in just exactly how far advanced that it already is and how far advanced that it's actually heading towards. Especially whenever you start creating drones that basically does your army work for you. And now somebody has caught on to, hey, if you get close to another drone, they won't be able to see your drone. So we're going to have to figure out some way or another of detecting if somebody's trying to piggyback. Because by piggybacking, that means while that drone is coming back to wherever it was sent from, somebody else's drone can be piggybacking. Somebody's going to have to put a pencil to it to figure out how in the world that event ever took place pertaining to those drones. I could go on and on and on with artificial intelligence. Please listen to this.
AI feels new to most of us who really kind of discovered its potential within the last year or so. But we talk about the exciting things, detecting and perhaps treating cancer. And then we talk about the worrisome thing, fakes, fraud, disinformation. We've seen that already in the political arena. Does it give you pause as to what the potential and how far you can take this?
Absolutely, in the sense that one of the things that I feel that's very healthy is we're not just talking about all of the things this new technology can do, but we're also talking about the unintended consequences. We have learned, even as a tech industry, is that we have to simultaneously address both of these. How do you really amplify the benefits and dampen the unintended consequences?
We're marching down the road to the first AI election. Are you holding your breath as to see how AI can help and how it may be weaponized?
In fact, it goes back again. This is not the first election where we dealt with disinformation or propaganda campaigns by adversaries and election interference. So therefore, I think what we have to go back again is, for example, I think we're doing all the work across the tech industry around watermarking, detecting deep fakes and content IDs. There's going to be enough and more technology, quite frankly, in order to be able to identify the issues around disinformation and misinformation. Then the question again comes back to how do we build consensus between parties, candidates, and the norms around what is acceptable, not acceptable.
You've had the benefit, I presume, of being able to peek around the corner and see what's out there, see what may be coming. Does any of it make you want to put up a stop sign?
With all of the technology, I am more in the camp of let us make sure that the technology ultimately is just a tool.
Microsoft promotes its AI-powered Copilot software as just that.
This is not about replacing the human in the loop. In fact, it's about empowering the human.
It's an assistant.
It's an assistant.
You've talked a lot about guardrails in the past and the need to regulate.
That's supposed to be the incentive. That's supposed to be the motive in why we're dibbly-dabbling around in stuff that I personally believe that the Egyptians, going all the way back into the old primitive world, had already done dibble-dabbled off into. In other words, we're starting to regain some of that energy that they had already done touched off on. And if you don't believe me, start watching the History Channel because they talk a great deal about it.
This industry, what is it that needs to be under control?
When I think about it, there are many, many areas we talked about even in our conversation, which is there is things people talk about if there is AI takeoff, right? One of the existential risks people talk about in AI is what if AI is so powerful that it's not in human control? That obviously is an existential issue for us.
In our interview, we also discussed AI's impact on jobs.
Well, I think there will be.
Have you ever thought that there could have been more of a deeper reason towards the world becoming destroyed of a great meteor that froze everything out, other than wanting to kill all the big dinosaurs and all the other prehistoric stuff? Have you ever sat down and really thought, why would God, the creator of all, why would he have allowed for that meteor to have hit the planet Earth and done that? Just like the Great Flood. There was so much wickedness going on to the point that there was no sense of reality pertaining to right and wrong. And whenever you start seeing innocent lives being damaged on account of senseless adults, it was basically a mercy killing whenever God stepped in and said, you know what? Enough is enough. And he put an end to it. You see, there's been several blueprints made for humanity, I believe, in seeing where we are today, going all the way back, I don't know, probably 60,000 years ago. There's been interferences by the satanic movement that has scrambled the Holy Father's intent for mankind. But at the same time, God the Father has to walk this tight line in understanding that it's Lucifer that has contaminated not only us, but contaminated our way of thinking, and now it's contaminated our world and our atmosphere and our water and our air, and I could go on and on and on. So we have brought these woes upon to ourselves because of greedy, selfish, cruel, mean, insensitive individuals. And if we're not smart enough to work our way out of this hole, I'm just afraid it's only going to get deeper and darker as we fall into even a worse state than what we are in right now. In other words, we've been taking one step forward and two steps back basically ever since the assassination of Kennedy. And I tend to wonder that that's the reason why the Heavenly Father anointed me towards me being basically a messenger with a message. And me having the sense that I have about various things from A to Z. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm a specialist in none of them. I don't claim to be nothing. All I am is trying to be the carrier in the messengers with the messages to be able to put out there to the world to try to help society and not harm and hurt society. But man, did they ever demon in the world come at me towards trying to do the very opposite. Like my son on the telephone talked about, he said, Dad, you got lots of enemies. And you know what? Dad does. But so does any other true born-again believing Christian that's truly in the Spirit of God and are truly out there on the front lines so that they can share their opinions and help those and lead those that's never been saved, lead them to the Lord so that they will. So many people out there are so bamboozled about the connection with the Heavenly Father. They are so bamboozled whenever it comes to actually being in tune with the Holy Spirit, God the Father, God the Son, and the Holy Spirit pertaining to the Trinity. Now you can pick, you can antagonize, you can take a brand new Cadillac or a perfectly structured machine and pick at it and find all kind of imperfections in it, because I know the King James Version Bible is not perfect, and I do know that there's errors in it. There is errors in the Bible. But they're not significant enough to cause a human being to go to hell over. This AI, this is creepy. this is creepy stuff that we're touching off into. And it's something that, I had to pray for, because I knew that if I didn't have this energy, this entity that was going to help me to be able to get my message out to the public, that if I was depending upon Northwest Tennessee or Washington, D.C., or basically the continental United States in general, of getting my message out before the world, I would have probably been waiting until hell froze over. That was one of the reasons why, I'm not saying that it was a primary reason, but that was one of the reasons why that I had to stick my neck out and go out west and do what I done out there towards identifying the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, regarding the Oklahoma bombing and the Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas incident. Is because I could not get backers, supporters, partners, regardless whether it was prayer partners or ministry partners or evangelist partners. I couldn't find them. And even to this day, I still haven't found none. If they're out there, I sure would like to know that they're out there. And it takes a little bit more than just to be a secret admirer if you're really going to stand with somebody. You can admire somebody all you want towards their drive, towards their whatever. But until you've actually moved on that endeavor, it's basically an intention. Do you have any idea how many people are going to be in hell? That's going to be one of their primary excuses, by saying, well, God, I intended to make things right. I intended to talk to my daddy. I intended to talk to my daughter. I intended, Lord, to make amends before I breathe my last breath. Good intentions ain't worth nothing. Just like a raindrop that never hits the ground, what good is it if it never hits the soil? You can have all the moisture in the air you want.
Well, I think there will be new job creation, new skills picked up, and yes, there will be overall displacement in the labor market, which I think will be much more dynamic than we give labor markets credit for.
I do want to ask you about the New York Times lawsuit against your partner, OpenAI, and yourself, about the idea of using their content, using New York Times content to train AI. It does kind of open a thought about where this information comes from and who ultimately benefits.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is going to be very, very important is both what is the copyright protection as well as what is fair use in a world where there is transformative new technology. I think that that's really where the copyright laws have to essentially now be interpreted for what is a new transformation technology. We've done this in the past. I'm sure we'll come out with the right set of guidelines on what is used for training.
And we talk.
I want to say this. I think it was Davy Crockett, if I'm not mistaken, that said whenever it gets to the point that you can see the smoke coming out of your neighbor's chimney, you're entirely too close to one another in being able to air out one another's laundry. That's basically what AI is fumigating. It's transforming a normal life that people used to have a little bit of secrecy or dignity over, and now everything's being exposed. I actually put it in the category of cheap seats. I have seen so much just within the past since basically 2015, whenever I first got my smartphone, basically the past 10 years. I have seen so many beautiful as well as ugly things on my telephone that I could have searched the library head and toe, going through every book in there, and I still would not have been as familiarized with the global world events today as what I would have had if I would have basically lived in an encyclopedia. It has advanced the knowledge to where now everybody knows what everybody else is doing. Of course, there's always going to be those pitfalls, and there's always going to be those hardcore cases of people that refuses to get online because they want to basically be off the grid for whatever reason. Maybe they got warrants. Maybe they're a mean person. Maybe they just don't want to be on the grid, period. But there's a lot of people that's going to remain off the grid in some form or fashion, even if they have to live in a cave. That's going to be that way with any society. It don't matter if it was the primitive society or the Adam and Eve society or the Great Flood Noah society, which is basically the society that we're in right now, called the premillennials. The premillennium. The millennium has yet to happen pertaining to the 1,000-year millennium. So we're still living in the premillennium state, which is part of that same state that come off of the Great Flood. But I truly believe that we're at the brink of that no longer being the case.
Hack on Microsoft corporate systems that the company says was carried out by a Russian state-sponsored group. It set off some alarm bells on Capitol Hill in the sense of how much reliance the government has on Microsoft. Tell me about the alarm bells in Washington State at your headquarters.
You know, when you have an adversary who is a nation state or a country that is, got institutional sort of, strength, organizations that are both well-resourced and are relentless and attacking, I'm glad that we have the capability we have to even detect what they're doing. I really, really hope, whether it's the US, it's about Russia or China in particular, these are the three powers who need to come together and really settle on some Geneva Convention. Because if this is about two nation states attacking each other, and especially civilian targets, then we're in a very new world order. And it's a breakdown of world order, which I think we've not seen before.
It's on a trajectory of self-destruction. That's the trajectory that we're on. And the thing about it is, it could be just the very opposite towards everybody helping everybody and becoming that much more unified in accomplishing peace and utopia. But it's pretty apparent that there's a whole lot of people out there that talk the talk but ain't willing to walk the walk.
To my interview with Microsoft's Satya Nadella. Still ahead, the fentanyl crisis, our exclusive look at whether new cooperation with China will make a difference in battling the overdose epidemic.
They said that fentanyl was like 50 times more powerful or something like that than heroin. As far as I'm concerned, that come out of the very pits of hell. And for any country, including our own, anybody that's caught making it or having any type of part of it in manufacturing it or selling it, putting it out to people, it ought to be an automatic death sentence. It should be an automatic death sentence if you get caught with fentanyl around your existences. Unless you can prove that somebody set you up and you was entrapped by it. The only way that the world is going to come clean on fentanyl, I believe, and I know this is going to sound cruel, it's going to sound cold, and it's probably going to upset some people, is the same way that China addressed their problem in the 1800s with heroin that basically had to genocide. They had to go in and genocide people and make a believer out of their citizens that if you get caught with this drug around you, on you, or in you, this is what you can expect. I know it sounds callous and cold, especially in your psychiatric world that thinks the capital punishment is a thing that we should not have presently, that should be in the past. But how are you going to convince people whenever it comes to the rule of law? And some of them won't care, even if they do. Even if you was to pass a law and say it's an automatic death sentence, some of them don't care because it's their way of being able to escape out of the grips of society, to where if they do get caught, they know they're going to die. In other words, they're cowards and they don't want to take their own lives, so they do something immoral or illegal to the point of hoping somebody else will do it for them.
It's been called the worst drug crisis in American history, the fentanyl epidemic. The U.S. has said chemicals from China are fueling it. But today, after years of frosty relations, U.S. and Chinese officials raised hopes of stemming the flow. Janice Mackey-Frayer is in Beijing.
With the opioid crisis ravaging the U.S., the first direct cooperation in years from China, aimed at limiting the trade of substances from China's vast chemicals industry to drug cartels in Mexico, where it's synthesized to make fentanyl 50 times more powerful than heroin that's killing so many Americans. That's the framework for meetings between U.S. and Chinese officials here.
For Americans who are wondering, can it really work? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that this is an important step. We obviously have areas of disagreement with China, but there are areas of mutual cooperation. These renewed talks follow a deal struck by President Biden and China's President Xi Jinping. The trade-off, removing a Chinese police forensics facility from a U.S. entity list, sanctions that included the National Narcotics Lab. NBC News was given rare access to the lab, where Chinese authorities say they're tracking new chemicals used by drug traffickers.
As a chemist, I know that if you put these chemicals in the control list, they will quickly shift to others.
Still, China sees the crisis as a U.S. demand problem. Yu Haibin is deputy director of China's Narcotics Control Bureau. We need to collaborate even more closely than the criminals do, he says. I understand there are doubts in the U.S. about China's sincerity. U.S.-China relations have stabilized, though on fentanyl, experts are skeptical, beyond what both sides cautiously call a good first step. Janice Mackey-Frayer, NBC News, Beijing.
And still to come here tonight, we'll peer into Apple's bold vision of the future.
Oh, it's cold outside. Time to protect your vehicle.
More
Film my adventures and put it on TV.
more virtual reality stuff. Here we go.
Back now with Apple's new vision of the future. Some say it's a game changer, but others ask, is it worth the price? Days before it officially goes on sale, Savannah Sellers has an inside look.
Apple's foray into mixed reality with its Vision Pro headset hit stores Friday, but NBC News tech contributor Joanna Stern helped us get an early look.
This thing does a lot of cool things, but it is a first-generation product.
And at $3,499, it's a pricey product, calling into question, who's this for right now?
There's probably two groups of people this is for. Apple diehards, and then software developers who are thinking about developing their apps for this new platform.
I just had to put my contacts in.
Yeah, you can't wear glasses with it, but you can get these special lens inserts with your prescription, and it works great.
Your eyes, now essentially your cursor.
It is amazing how it knows what I'm looking at.
And a simple pinching movement replaces a mouse click.
This command center feeling is really interesting. And
it's designed for office work, entertainment, even household chores.
If we were cooking, you'd have that up on the right-hand side of your kitchen. So let's make a timer for 5 minutes. Pinch and hold and drag it over here to this.
Wow. Tech enthusiasts do have their critiques, including the headset's weight and the external battery pack.
It's bulky. It's heavy. It has a short battery life. It can be buggy, but it is very cool. What makes this different is that you are seeing your real world.
And possibly a glimpse of the future through tech-tinted glasses. Savannah Sellers, NBC News, New York.
And up next, we'll remember a barrier-breaking giant of American musical theater, the one and only Chita Rivera. Finally, she burst onto the stage in West Side Story in the 1950s. Now Chita Rivera, the actress, singer, and dancer who entertained generations, has died at age 91. Here's Tom Yamas.
One of Broadway's greatest pioneers, Chita Rivera, this proud Puerto Rican singing, acting, and dancing through every decade of her life.
I'm so lucky.
Tonight, the world remembering a legend and a Latina who broke barriers. Many know her as Chita Rivera.
This is a good story, I think, other than her death. Of course, that's part of life. But for anybody to come to America and to be able to make a mark like she did, speaks volumes about our democracy towards who we are over here in America.
Her full name,
Dolores Conchita Figueroa de Rivera, Montestuco Florentina Canimacro de Fluente.
Wow.
She started as a ballerina with a scholarship at 16 to the School of American Ballet in New York.
Once a dancer, always a dancer.
But it was her iconic performance from the classic Broadway show West Side Story.
Anita's gonna get her kicks tonight.
Playing the role of Anita, navigating racial prejudices in the 1950s that sparked her career and gave her purpose.
It wasn't just a show. It was information about what's happening.
She later was nominated for
It was a movement.
For 10 Tony Awards, winning twice.
What a wonderful honor.
Rivera also performing roles in classics such as Chicago. She never stopped dancing, working on Broadway into her 80s. She was the first Hispanic woman to receive the Kennedy Center Award and the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Like her unforgettable Anita, Chita Rivera has shown that life can indeed be bright in America.
Chita Rivera, que vida, what a life. She was 91.
Miss Rivera, you're on. Good.
Tom Yamas, NBC News.
And that's nightly news for this Tuesday.
She must have had a heck of a drive to be able to stay in that good of a shape for that long length of time. Amazing how people can just keep pushing and pushing and pushing themselves and going over the hurdles of the human barriers.
$1,000 in fines. That's the sentence handed down today in federal court for Clayton Ray Mullins. He's the Marshall County man that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Here are images of Mullins the day of the violent attack. Back in September, he pleaded guilty to the charge of assaulting, resisting, or impeding officers. Mullins attempted to grab the foot of a D.C. Metro police officer at one of the entrances to the Capitol building. That officer was ultimately dragged down the steps, and rioters continued to attack him. His fines break down like this. Over $30,000 in restitution to a Metropolitan Police officer for medical expenses, almost $50,000 in other fines, and $2,000 in restitution to the architect of the Capitol. After he serves 2.5 years in prison, Mullins will serve 3 years of supervised release. We've covered Mullins' case extensively in the past. To see that coverage, find this story at WPST-Local6.com. Former President Donald Trump will be on the primary ballot in Illinois this spring. This is video of the State Board of Elections making that decision today. The challenge centered around the Constitution's insurrection clause. Some argue Trump's involvement in the January 6th Capitol riot would disqualify him from running. The Board of Elections decided today they don't have the authority to rule on that issue. New at 6.
What did they say? What did he just say? Listen to this again.
Clause. Some argue Trump's involvement in the January 6th Capitol riot would disqualify him from running. The Board of Elections decided today they don't have the authority to rule on that issue. New at 6. Byron Black's bond is set.
The Board of Elections.
Today they don't have the authority to rule on.
Now, ask yourself a question.
Capitol riot would disqualify him from running. The Board of Elections decided today they don't have the authority to rule on that issue.
Now, if the Board of Elections don't have that authority, who does? Is my question. The Board of Elections. Who does have that authority? Isn't that why we allowed for the committee to be set up to begin with? Isn't that all part of free, fair, open elections? I think what it is, a lot of people are frightened. The system now has finally gotten caught between a hard place and a rock. And they're debating on whether or not it's worth the risk on just leaving Donald alone and letting this thing play out in the eyes of the public, or rearing up and knocking him of eligibility that could actually lead into something even worse pertaining to rioting. How did we get here? How in the world did the American people get to where we are today? Towards seeing something like this actually occur right in front of our very eyes. Do you think it had anything to do with what went on in the late 80s? Leading up into the 90s and leading up into the 2000s? There's been a long trail of once upon a time. Once upon a time will be the ultimate historical tale of the American legend. Once upon a time, it was this way, and now it's that way. Once upon a time, people deemed it necessary to stand up and to actually pay the ultimate sacrifice for what's fair and right for all of us, and not just part of all of us. Liberty for all. How did we get here? How do we get out of here? How do we get out of this? Do we just let it play itself out pertaining to the will of the people? Or do we intervene with different panels and Supreme Courts and having debates on TV of whether or not Donald Trump is actually eligible to even run for president? According to some of the fact finding that I've listened to, that if anybody is involved in an insurrection, they're automatically not available to run for public office ever again. That's what I've been told. Now, once more, if those words don't mean nothing, well, then somebody needs to take the piece of paper that the words is written on and rip it up. Rip it up right in front of everybody's face and say, you know what? These policies and these laws are in vain, and we're no longer going to live by them.
New at 6, Byron Black's bond is set at $1 million. He's a Caldwell County man accused of killing his wife over the weekend and then taking the couple's child. It prompted an Amber Alert yesterday before he was eventually found. Black will be in court tomorrow, arraigned on his murder charge. Well, crime rates are steadily decreasing in Paducah. That was verified by the 2023 annual report from the Paducah Police Department. Local 6's Carly Dick went over that data today and joins us now. So
these are the statistics that they have on their books. How about all the other crimes that never got reported? How about all the other stuff that no one never told nobody about?
So how much did crime rates go down last year?
Todd, by 2%. And although that may not sound like much, it reflects an increasingly safer community.
And that sounds good. And I wish that it was more than that. I really do. But it's got to the point that people don't want to involve the police no more in their affairs because of whatever reason. Maybe they got a criminal record themselves. Maybe whenever it's all said and done with, the police is going to backfire on them, and instead of the perpetrator going to jail, now the victim goes to jail. There's lots of reasons why that people no longer goes to the police anymore. And a great deal of that reason is called trust. people have lost trust in these people that claim that they're in there for the will of all the people, knowing that they're not in there for the will of all the people. They're only in there for the will of certain people. So whenever they give out statistics like she's fixing to give out here, pretending to 2%, you can buy it if you want to. I don't. Just like whenever they come out with the statistics of the jobs, yeah, they may have hired 40,000 jobs in the month of December compared to whenever. But how many of those people actually kept those jobs, and how many of those people actually got counted, sometimes 4 or 5 times, because every time they get a job, they quit and get another job, and then they quit that job and then get another job. It's falsified records that don't keep up with the whole truth rather than just parts of it. And it gives out false information to people. You know, it's kind of like them saying, well, the economy is finally stabilized. The economy's better. I got news for you. Whenever you go shopping in these grocery stores, the majority of the people that I talk to are telling people, and as well as themselves, that on average, people are paying about 15 to 20% more on the very products that they was paying for pre-COVID versus right now where we're at. Even though gas went up to $5, $6 a gallon, and now it's back down to about $2.50 a gallon or something like that. I don't know. Did the prices of the bread go down? Maybe. I guarantee you bacon didn't. I guarantee there's lots of other prices in that grocery store that never went down. May have went down a little bit, but it didn't go back down pre-COVID.
The Paducah Police Department's 2023 annual report showed a decrease in many serious crimes, one of those being homicide.
We didn't have a shooting incident that resulted in somebody's death, where in the previous years we've had that.
There were 6 homicides in 2022 and only 1 last year relating to a domestic issue.
That to me shows that there's been that decrease in violent crime within the city.
While aggravated assaults increased from 33 to 45, 13 of those were against officers, not random acts of violence.
It wasn't necessarily that aggravated assaults, crimes against persons within the city rose significantly. While it did, because those are against police, that wasn't against, just a random citizen.
And officers emphasized traffic enforcement, leading to an increase in the apprehension of dangerous drivers. 323 DUI arrests were made last year, a 33% increase from 2022.
It's a focus on traffic enforcement across the entire city. And so one of the things that you see is that people that are driving impaired, they speed, they do other traffic violations that ultimately leads to the officers discovering that they're driving impaired.
Overall, crime rates steadily decrease each year, reflecting the city's progress.
And so to me, that's extremely important because that shows that Paducah is not becoming a more dangerous city. It's becoming a safer place to be.
The number of car crashes also...
And I hope that to be so. I really do. I have nothing against Paducah, Kentucky. Even though I got roughed up in Paducah, Kentucky on actually 2 different occasions.
Now, your Weather Authority first forecast.
Many of us were able to get at least a little sunshine in the skies today. Only a few of you didn't really get much of that sunshine, and that kept temperatures down.
Let's go. Matter of fact, let's just stop it and do this. Bingo.
Here's video from earlier today.
They had a major fire on the river today.
Flowers even better. Flowers and a gift.
Towboat driver.
That group has put out a statement saying that it is going to end its military operations against U.S. forces in the region. Here's a part of that statement. It said, we are announcing the suspension of military and security operations against the occupation forces, that's U.S. troops, in order to prevent embarrassment to the Iraqi government. Now, the statement goes on to say that the group will take some acts of self-defense against any American hostilities. And when the Pentagon was asked about this, a spokesperson basically said,
actions speak louder than words, that the U.S., of course, has been demanding that these attacks stop for a number of months now. So they need to see exactly if those attacks will stop, and that until then, the U.S. will continue to proceed and prepare to respond in a time and a manner of the U.S.'s choosing. Anderson?
Jay Lee, thanks very much. This next report, we should warn you, is graphic. Surveillance video of Israeli special forces undercover in disguise infiltrating a hospital in the West Bank this morning. Israel says it killed 3 terrorists. More from CNN's Nick Robertson.
We've done seen that. We done seen that on this video, on this recording.
Know how that works.
I got to put a wizard on my payroll. I need a little
magic.
Let's go over here.
For most of my life, I've worn a black t-shirt.
And they should be defunded, or being probably the loudest voice in Congress to defund the police. And now, of course, one of those security agents was her husband, who's not licensed. So once again, but, you know, look, we have members.
Skin in the game, that if everything is completely free, people will overuse it. So the idea is to have, they used to have co-insurance, and there still is.
The legs out from under the Department of Homeland Security to adjust and deal with this massive influx of migration at the border. So it is simply impossible for the department, for the Secretary of Homeland Security to adhere to each and every one of those under the circumstances presented to the department. Not only that, when the Secretary and the administration has tried to use their limited authority to change policy to limit the number of people coming to the border, to streamline the process, to make it go through ports of entry, Republicans filed lawsuits to stop the administration from doing it. So again, the hypocrisy of you sitting here accusing Secretary Mayorkas of failing to enforce the law when you are going to court to prevent him from enforcing the law is hypocrisy at its height. You have created this situation, and now you want to have the second impeachment of a cabinet secretary ever. You let him do his job. You work with the Senate, your colleagues in the Senate, on the legislation needed, and then let's figure out how to address the border.
Gentleman's time has expired.
It all starts uphill and it all runs downhill. It starts at the top. And if people can't figure that out because of incapabilities or whatever reasons why, if they can't figure that out, then it's no one's fault but our own. Good luck to all of us. God bless America. God bless our troops. Heaven, please, please help us all in these troubled waters that we're in. God bless and shalom.